Alicia Mobilire Namakula is the co founder of Women Income Network in Uganda. Her talk is called Maggot Farming Also Has a Data Ecosystem Map, if you think deeper.
Women Income Network was started in 2021 as a social enterprise that empowers women to become maggot farmers. And the sole purpose for this was to boost their economic mobility, but also ensure that women are at the forefront of building economic resilience and food security using this technology. Been born in Uganda, and specifically, I am operating in my own community, the community where I was born and the community that has raised me. And for me, this is very, very important working in proximity with my community because I know firsthand the things that affect them. And I also know the assets in the community that I can leverage to maximize or to drive our goal of economic empowerment. So I operate in a region called Rural District. That was where I was born. The biggest population of the households in this region are managed by women. So we knew that empowering women would result into supporting many households or many people living in this region. We wanted to explore a technology that can give back to the animal feed industry, which is quite big, but also ensure that women create their own niche using this novel technology of maggot farming. When we talk about technology, I'm talking about the bio innovations that are driven through maggot farming itself. Maggot farming has a data ecosystem, So for us, it was very essential to have that information or to have that data firsthand that we can sell or disseminate to the communities for them to understand how to propagate this technology to maximize productivity. We have data around different environmental conditions that are optimal for producing maggot farming in our particular ecological environment. We collect data on the food waste that is used, its composition, and also citing out the different food waste spots that women can identify or can focus on to easily mobilize waste when they venture into this technology. We're also tracking the growth rate of the maggots while using the different food waste. So all those sorts of data are very important for us when we are tracking economic mobility or viability of the technology, but also the environmental impact and the food security impact, because by this, we are able to provide a protein food security. We work closely with the agriculture extension workers at the sub-county level and also at the general local government level to disseminate such information and also create awareness of maggot farming as a business opportunity to young people and women from marginalized communities from around different other communities outside the area where we are operating. The biggest thing is having passion that is rooted in the community that has raised you. So every time that you feel you cannot go on anymore and reflect back to your community and their expectations, with that, I am able to keep reminded on why I started this and on why I should continue driving this.
June B is a Korean citizen and the co founder of Youth for Privacy, an organization based in the US. His talk is called What About the Biggest Stakeholder on the Internet? The Youth.
I'm a Korean citizen, and every Korean citizen has to serve in their mandatory military service. And for me, I served at the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. And one of the key aspects of living inside these kind of military barracks in a very remote part of the Korea is that a lot of your daily actions are either surveilled or recorded or monitored. So it was the lifestyle living inside the army was very different from the civilian lifestyle I had. So my experiences in the DMZ made me realize the importance of privacy that we have. That got me interested in what are the ways I could advocate for better privacy. After I got discharged from the army, I went back to school and I studied computer science. And there was one course I actually took that really changed how I think about digital privacy. It was called Anonymity and Privacy by Professor Stephen Bellovin from Columbia University. And that course really opened my eyes on what are the technical and also the legal system of surveillance that we have, and also what we could do to protect ourselves better. I worked full time as a software engineer. I also have a nonprofit called Youth for Privacy. It is a youth led and youth run NGO focused on youth empowerment, digital privacy advocacy, and cybersecurity education. So far, we've advocated for youth perspectives on privacy in international forums like the United Nations and the OECD. We also hosted a lot of workshops from Buenos Aires to New York to Seoul, teaching young students about privacy and cybersecurity. And we plan to expand our workshop services to more cities around the world. Internet culture that we know it is driven by youth. You know, young people make the contents that everybody sees. Young people consume the content. Young people talk about it. It's young people. For us, internet is where we find our community. We view it as where we find ourselves, find our identity, find people that we want to talk to, find the things that we love, and find the things we're passionate about. 50% of all internet users are under 30. Yet, whenever I attend a lot of the processes at the United Nations, for example, on cybersecurity and ICTs, I realize that most of the voices represented are definitely not youth. There's a disconnect between the processes that make regulations or make rules or norms for internet behaviors versus the bulk of the people who actually drive the internet culture. And I think that's where the power of data lies. It is our job to make sure that the data that we have not be used for the nefarious purposes, but actually used for good. And now that's easier said than done. So what we need is initiatives like the Data Values Project, where we start conversations about how people want the data to be used, so that we have some sense of norms, procedures, or processes, so that we could have some checks on how our data is used. I think that when it comes to data, when it comes to privacy, uh, these topics are very much agnostic of where you are in society. Like, regardless of your lifestyle, regardless of your age, regardless of your economic status, uh, we all live in a society that runs on data. That allows the entire world to come together and actually have a thing that everybody has an equal stakeholdership. And I think that's very different from a lot of the different topics out there.
Eric Nwala is the director of Lifeline Youth Empowerment Center in Uganda. His talk is called When It Is Illegal to Be Me, What Happens to My Data?
My name is Eric Ndaula. I work with an organization called Lifeline Youth Empowerment Center. We work with gay, bisexual, and queer young men at the intersectionality of digital rights, human rights, and data within Uganda. Being invisible in a country where I come from in Uganda has really led to us a lot of different challenges. One of the biggest is the fact that people think that you don't exist. And that's because some people or people authorities decide maybe to exclude you where they are collecting data, or they don't really count you as a person who deserves services or who deserves human rights, because in their own perspective, being queer or being LGBT is not socially accepted, is not culturally accepted or legally accepted. So they rather leave you behind and don't count you in the data. So that inspired my journey to become a data change maker, but also, most importantly, to see that all these gaps that we are having, the challenges that we're having as a community, are bridged upon, especially in terms of telling our stories, owning our stories, putting faces to numbers, and not just becoming a statistic somewhere else, but rather having really different stories that we tell, and we own those stories as a community. When we first had challenges with the government, especially in terms of bringing in a law to criminalize homosexuality in Uganda, it was in around 2009. But between that time, organizations were working so hard to see that they combat this discrimination, this hate that had come on. And one time there was this a meeting that happened, an attendance list that had phone numbers and addresses of the individuals that had come to the meeting, somehow leaked to the media. And at the end of the day, we saw a witch hunt that happened within the media, with a big headline that kill them, they're after our children. And this has been the notion, the hate that has been happening. And now when it comes to people having unauthorized access to data, that is particularly for LGBTQ people, they'll misuse it. So it's important to understand that when we document, for example, how much hate speech and misinformation within the media has led to people into depression, it has led people being attacked, it has led to purporting different perspectives of a community that are not true, we realize that we cannot delink data and human rights at the end of the day. Because even when we want governments to listen to issues, even when we want the decision makers to take upon decisions that are going to protect human rights, we need to provide them with data. For example, we are collecting data right now, documenting violations of human rights, specifically as a result of the law that came in place. And this information is going to help us, for example, as we are having a case right now, to see that the annulment of this law happens. Because from the time that this law was enacted up to right now, we've seen a rising number of over 50% of evictions specifically related to LGBTQ people. And this has not been the issue in the past. Compared to other years, there is a very high number of people that are just being evicted because the law permits landlords to just throw away people. Documenting this information is important, that we're going to provide as evidence within the courts of law to put them, hey, these violations are happening and you need to act upon this. You need to annul this law. Organizations like Lifeline, organizations that are data-driven, organizations that are working on data specifically, they have a role to play, and that role is to ensure that communities understand how much useful is data, and how much it is important to tell their stories, but also tell them in a way that keeps them safe, in a way that does not put them at risk, in a way that instead helps them to get services, to be protected by the society, but also to be protected by the governments. Learning about data is a journey. One that takes us to understand our own selves and our own stories, and understand the importance of our stories, and not just telling stories of numbers, but really stories of realities and of people. Because in every number, there is an individual and there is a life, and that life matters.